What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It is Monday. I actually leave for Madrid in a few hours, but wanted to get this tier list video out. It's Monday. We got plenty of content coming on the YouTube channel, but as always, we got to get out the tier list. We've completed a number now of 5 weeks of online qualifiers, 1 week of minor online matches. We got like 6 weeks of online content between 3 weeks in December, 3 weeks in January. Let's make our final tier list and rank all the teams heading into this first event of the season in Spain. All right, so this is our tier list from last week's episode. If you are new to the tier list episode, here's how we do it. We don't do the letter thing. I do it by these categories, and things are starting to really kind of even their way out as we head to the first event. Starting at the top, we have event winners. I used to call this Sunday regulars. I'll probably bring that back after this event, but at the moment, I think this is actually, you know what? We're gonna live edit this. I'm bringing back Sunday regulars. It's back. Sunday regulars is back. Top 3, top 4 teams I expect to regularly make Sundays. It's pretty straightforward, right? All right, next up, we have fighting for Sundays. This is usually the top 6 teams that are just on the edge of contention. You're kind of dark horses to win the event. Teams that I think could definitely make a run and make an appearance on Sunday. Could they win the event? I don't know, but they could definitely push one of these teams out in a losers bracket match or winners round 2 or something like that. I don't know is a bit of a weird tier. I've called us a couple different names over the course of the years. I think it's pretty clear what teams are going to be in this tier, and I just don't know if the teams are good or bad. It's just really hard to tell based on how they played recently. And then missing pieces are teams that I think need a roster change. And there are going to be quite a few, including one new addition as of yesterday. All right, let's start it off with a team that is clearly number 12 because they have not won a match this entire season. They have not gone to game 5 this whole season. Every match has ended in 3 or 4 maps, and that is the Vegas Falcons. They gave LAG basically a free win on Saturday, getting 3-0'd. And in this lineup this week, they actually benched Wixel and brought in King. So it was Doom, Exnid, King, and Roxas. And yeah, they didn't look close to beating LAG in that matchup. I think Vegas is kind of doing an eval of their whole roster, so I don't really expect much in the way of action at the event from them. I'm just really curious what they're going to have next split, because they'll have now data on all the players. Will Kicks come back? Could they actually make the best version of their team? I don't know, but right now these guys are they're not competitive, bro. All right, so I'm going to mix this up. I would normally do the order, but I'm moving Cloud9 down here to the second worst spot in the league. Only 1 win so far on the season. I know they had that first week where they basically chalked it up to online, but they've still only won 1 match since then, which was the second week in which they beat Minnesota in game 4. This week, they only had 1 match, and they did lose game 5 to Atlanta FaZe, so I'll tip a little bit on their battle in that series, but they still couldn't find a way to win against FaZe, who were playing like C plus B minus COD on the day. Like, it literally was the perfect scenario for C9 to actually get a win that series, and they really couldn't figure it out. Like, I think the C9 team's probably like pretty mixy and hardpoint. Like, I think they battle with everybody in the game mode, but search and control, man, especially control, these guys are just awful. And so until they get more progress here, I'm putting them down here. I think one of their ARs need to go. Yeah, I think the C9 team has been, for me, by far the most disappointing team so far at this split. All right, next up we have the order of this missing piece is a little bit tricky because it's not going to reflect the standings, because there's a couple of teams that are kind of in weird situations around the bottom here. We're gonna go next with the LAG Gorilla Mates, whatever. I don't know. This team's team name is so dumb. Anyway, they only had that 1 match this week. It was the Vegas match, and it was a freebie, and they ended the split going 2-5. And just maybe looking at the bracket, there's a chance that they could, on the top side, maybe get a little bit of a run here. Like, Miami might drop down and play them, and then maybe Carolina. Like, it's doable for LAG to get like a top 6 placing, I think, compared to, say, maybe the bottom side of this bracket. But I don't know. I still think this is another team that needs a roster change. They're a master of none. They battle and they lose close series. I said before the season that this is going to be a bad online team, but they would battle on LAN. And let's see if they can follow up on the latter part of that. Otherwise, and I still think it's probably going to happen, they're getting top 8, they're making a roster change. It is what it is. Let's talk Miami Heretics. They are the first team ever to go 2-5, I believe, in a split and still make winners bracket, which is crazy because they lost both matches this week, both game 5s to Thieves and to Carolina. This is still a team that Respawn is good enough that they battle these teams pretty deep, but they cannot win S&Ds to really save their lives, other than the 2 searches they won a couple of weeks ago. Like, all I'm saying is this is everything you need to know about their search, bro. Okay, they're lowest in the league in overall round percentage. They get a decent amount of first bloods, and they only convert 65% of them. So they just don't know how to play the switch situationals in search. They play mixing maps, and they just can't close it out. And maybe they'll start to swing the other way when they get experience. But I really think with Super now finishing his European campaign and being available for selection next split, I think these guys are probably making a roster change, barring some insane run at a winner's bracket. And they have OpTic Texas round 1, so good luck with that. Now, Vancouver Search, I'm actually going to move them up a tier. I'm a little surprised. I was kind of counting this team out before the week. I was really down on them, but 2 very good victories this week against Carolina and Minnesota. And I think I got to move them in front of Minnesota right now. They have managed to sneak themselves into winner's bracket. Do I think that they're going to pull a classic surge and get top 6? It's possible. I still think with Boston and Carolina, those teams are maybe a little bit better, but it kind of depends on bracket draw. But I really like what I saw from 0-4 this week. This was the kind of week where they needed him to step up and really be that guy. And I'll be honest, he was that guy this week. So they have to play Toronto winners round 1. Toronto looked a little bit iffy this week. And then you lose that and you got to play Minnesota. So it's not the easiest bracket draw for Surge. And then like you beat Toronto, you might have to play FaZe. So we'll see, but I could see a top 6. I could also see a top 12, but you have to respect that the Vancouver team has battled to get in this spot where, do I think they probably need a roster change? Yeah, probably Hexy's still not playing well, but they're being serviceable. They battled in the winners, and you got to respect the fight that they have. And then we get to Minnesota Rocker, and I got to be honest, guys, I have to move them down this tier. They're now on a pretty decent slide since losing to Atlanta FaZe. Since, if we count the Atlanta FaZe loss, they have now lost 4 series in a row. Atlanta twice, Toronto once, and Vancouver once. So you could argue that they've lost to 2 of the top 3 teams and one of the teams that's been more hot, aka last week. So am I a little bit unfair for playing them in missing pieces? Maybe. The problem is I still think Paul is a weak link on this team, and I just think they're going to be in a kind of a pack-a-punch situation. As good as I think the Geo, Estrio, Nero core is, I just think they're 1 AR from being like a next level team, and for that I have to put them in this lower tier. They will start in losers bracket because they have just completely tossed the advantage they had with the good 2-2 start. It is what it is. That's how the CDL goes. All right, let's move up to the sort of dark horse tier here. We got Carolina. I'm still gonna put Boston in front of Carolina. Carolina went 1-1 this week, so they stopped the loser slide that they were on from the previous week. They did, however, start off the week with their Game 5 round 11 loss to Vancouver, and they did follow it up with a Game 5 almost round 11 win. Got to round 10 versus the Miami Heretics. So not the cleanest COD yet from Carolina. Their S&D was a little bit iffy this week, but the respawn was a little bit better, so they're still trying to find their way now. I think it's really gonna just depend on what version of like Reese Vivid we get at LAN. Like, will Gwyn actually perform on LAN this year? Because he just like Hook has a little bit of a differential in KD from online to LAN. But Carolina's in a decent spot to potentially get something going. And interestingly enough, they play Thieves winners round 1, and we'll get to Thieves in a minute. They're not looking like in best form here. So I actually think that if you're Carolina, this is probably the best time to play them. And I do think that Carolina have a real chance in this series because Thieves' S&D right now is, well, it's not good. All right, next up we have the Boston Breach, and I'm really happy and excited to talk about this team because we said on the last, or I said in the last tier list video that this is a big week for Boston. They had FaZe, they had Thieves, and wanted to see if they were real or not. They started off the week getting punched in the face by FaZe in like a 30-minute series. Map 1 was close and the other 2 maps were not. And then they really battled hard with Thieves. It was like a 2-hour series with a bunch of delays. But Boston ended up clutching that one in Game 5. And on top of that, Boston was actually up 2-0 in the series and almost got reverse swept. So they battled adversity in that one. And I really like the version of Boston we have coming in this major. Do I think they're going to win an event? No. I think Cammy dropping almost a 0.6, or actually less than a 0.6, and then winning that series against Thieves was crazy. I think probably speaks more towards the struggles with Thieves right now. But Boston's slaying is still a little bit iffy, but their teamwork is keeping them in every series. And I just think that they're going to be a tough out for anyone at this event. The only problem is, well, they play Atlanta FaZe winners round 1, and like I said, we know how the last series went, and it's just tough for me to really pick Boston to do much in this one. But the losers bracket run could be pretty decent. They'll drop down and play Cloud9 and losers round 1. They'll play either Minnesota, Toronto, or Vancouver and loses round 2. So you get top 6 at that point. Then you're probably playing potentially like Thieves or Carolina or OpTic or Miami. Like it's very doable for Boston to find a way to get top 4 or deeper in this one. But I just can't really pick them to beat FaZe in that one, considering how the matchup a few days ago went. But you know, if listen, if at the beginning of the season you told me that Boston would be like the 5th best team in the league, I would have called you crazy. But here we are. Kind of it's facts at the moment. All right, Sunday regulars, I'm going to do it in this order. We generally I say kind of in no order for this category, and I think it kind of rings true because I think all 3 of these teams can win the event, but they all have individual weaknesses, and I'm going to spend some good time in this tier list trying to outline what I think those weaknesses are for each team so you guys can track them over the course of the next week. Let's start with Thieves. 2 game 5s. They won 1 against Miami, lost 1 against Boston, and you know they're now 1-4. I think. No, 1-3, sorry, since in the month of January after starting off 4-0 in December. And I think this is a little bit of what we expected from early game struggles from Thieves. The chemistry is not quite there in Respawn. The chemistry is not quite there in S&D. They just don't look like they're sort of on the same page teamwork-wise. And I think the 2 biggest issues for Thieves is that their search game overall is not that good. You see 5-5 here and like, oh, that's a pretty decent record. And then you dive in the stats and you're like, this team's got 46% first blood percentage, which is like 2nd worst, 3rd worst in the league. Then you look on offense and it's 40%. Like this team definitely is not on paper right now really meshing in the S&D game mode. It's hard for me to see them clutching up, you know, game 5s against your FaZes, your OpTics, your Torontos, your Carolinas, even maybe even a Boston, as they already lost them in a game 5 this week in that mode. And the other problem for Thieves is this hard point map pool. Vault they're pretty good at, red card they're pretty good at, but every other map there's question marks. They vetoed Hacienda against Toronto on Sunday. That didn't really work out too well for them. They haven't really played protocol. Their Skyline, they've gotten punched in the face by some better teams on that. So I just, outside this red card vault situation, I don't really know what their bread and butters are in hardpoint. They're going to need to get a better 3rd and 4th map in the hardpoint map pool. So Thieves have Carolina winners round 1. That one could be a little bit dicey, but I think if you're Thieves and you kind of learn a little bit about yourselves over the course of this tournament, it's doable. I think Thieves is still going to find a way back in the top 4, but if you're a Thieves fan, this might not be the one where they win a championship, and that's okay, because if you're going to pick one event to struggle in, the first one is by far the best for that to happen. It's about the money tournaments at the end of the season, and everything's about the journey, and it is what it is. All right, so let's move on, and we're going to talk about Toronto Ultra. They only had 1 match this week after starting off the split 6-0. They did lose online in that first winners round 2 matchup. I guess it's round 2 because it was a single in bracket against Minnesota in the game 5. And OpTic kind of ran their pockets yesterday. Toronto did take a vault control, but both hardpoints were not close. S&D was a little bit close, but OpTic's red card S&D perhaps kind of paid off, and I thought they got a great map, especially from Ook. I think the argument you can make about Toronto is that, you know, you can kind of argue this OpTic match outside of playing FaZe, you know, the first match of the season was they're like best team that they played, because look at the squads that they have faced, and the schedule is what it is. But they played Vancouver when they were kind of mid, Vegas, well, they're free. Miami weren't that good in December. Minnesota haven't been that good in January. LAG haven't been good all season. Like, they've avoided Carolina, Thieves, Boston, and OpTic until Sunday. So I think Toronto's good, but the schedule might be inflating maybe where this team is at a little bit. This Toronto team's got a lot of inconsistent players. Joe is kind of one of the most inconsistent players in the league, and they've gotten a pretty even keel from Kleenex and Ben Beans this split, but Jamie Insight's got to play better. These stats are, they're not great. S&D, we always know he's good, but the respawn numbers around a 0.9. It was fine when they were playing the Miamis of the world, but this like slow, inactive play style that he has, and the way that some of these maps play with the speed right now, I just think Toronto's going to have a lot of trouble if he plays this way against an OpTic, against a FaZe, against a Boston, against a Carolina. I'm not really concerned about Toronto's map pool because they got a pretty deep map pool. They've kind of played every map, so I tip that. And they do have a pretty favorable winners round 1 matchup against Vancouver, but Vancouver played pretty good last weekend, so this could be a trap one. But I'm really looking forward to that potential FaZe Toronto rematch. I think I probably got FaZe in that one, but if you're Toronto and you win that and you get the winners finals probably against, I would say, OpTic, you never know in the rematch. You never know what can happen. But I think right now, based on team form, I would take Toronto over Thieves, and that's why I have them in that 3rd spot. I've made an executive decision because I think people are going to want to see this. I am moving FaZe and OpTic into their own tier for now while recording this video and just kind of thinking it through. I think these two teams right now are the clear like 1A, 1B of the league. And let's go through their resumes. And let me kind of explain why I think they're on sort of maybe a different level than the other two squads. Now, OpTic only had one match this week. That was a Toronto match we talked about a few minutes ago. And they finished this qualifier 6-1 and the #1 overall seed in the bracket. They've only lost one other match, and that was to Carolina in a game 5 in the semifinals of the minor tournament. Other than that, they pretty much have like played everyone pretty well. And they played mostly a lot of really good teams this split. They played Carolina, Boston, Thieves, Toronto in a split. They haven't played FaZe yet. They've scrimmed FaZe a bunch, and those have been some pretty fun scrims to watch. But if you're an OpTic fan, you got to really like the form that they're in, considering like all the turmoil with the roster in early December with Kyler, Hook coming in. Hook has been like incredible for these guys. Like, these stats are disgusting. And I think the question is always with Hook, you just have to talk about it. The KD differential, the performance differential between his online performance and his LAN performance is fairly significant. This is not a small sample size. This is like 4 years of LAN data about Hook. I think this is the year in the game where he finally makes inroads in that. But if it's the same issue, he goes to LAN, he's dropping a 0.95. His team might be a little bit dicey, and it's going to rely, I think, a little bit more on the other 3 players to kind of step up. So we'll see. But I think if there's any year where Hook is going to like actually follow through his online, the LAN performance this year should be the one. The only other thing with OpTic that I am tracking right now is that an entire split, they are only getting first blood 45% of the time. They are converting those a decent amount, 77%. You see that a lot of this is not really a defensive problem. Their first blood percentage on defense, 53.73, is pretty good. It's up there, with the elite teams. But their defensive first blood percentage is pretty low. They're not really winning the duels on offense at a high enough rate that I feel like their search game is elite. It's good, but this one could really hold them back against FaZe and Toronto, who are like very good on defense, do not really give a lot of space for other teams to make plays. But I'm not that really concerned about OpTic not making it to Sunday. I think they will. They avoid Toronto and FaZe. They have Carolina and Thieves on their same side. They got that Miami winners round 1 draw, which is interesting because there could be some crowd cheese going on with the Heretics there. And there's a long history of OpTic playing this franchise across a couple of different iterations when they were the Florida Mutineers. I think OpTic should be able to handle them, and then Carolina Thieves will be interesting. I think OpTic should be able to get by in the winners finals. I'm hoping we get to see our first edition of OpTic and FaZe. Maybe twice this event. We shall see. But if you're an OpTic fan, I don't know what else you could ask for your team this split. Like it's basically an A split, and you're in a good spot heading into this first event. All right, let's talk Atlanta FaZe, and what a turnaround for these guys. I mean, we were talking about how poor of a start they had to the season, starting off 1-3, but are on, I believe, a 7-game win streak in the month of January, and including one match in December against Falcons. So 6 in January, including winning the online minor 1 tournament. And for me, the player that stepped up the most is Celium. And it's crazy, like, to see the difference in his gameplay from December to January. I mean, just this weekend, we saw a bunch of S&D clutches. We saw him running around with a sub on vault, getting 4 pieces. I mean, he's just playing with a certain level of confidence and pace that just makes his team so hard to defeat. Because you know what happens in games like this is sometimes your subs get on and they aren't, shooting the straightest, and sometimes they're on point. When they're all on point, like, this team is really unplayable. But like, even on days where the subs are not playing that well, MC is just the ultimate safety blanket for this team. In the same way you see with OpTic and Dashi. I think those two teams are very similar in kind of the way that they're set up in that kind of bailout AR and the 2 real playmaking subs. So I think if you're a FaZe fan, this turnaround from MC and how Porter is playing in December is pretty good to see. I think the X factor on this team is Draza. I don't think he's had the best start to the season by his standards. He's played a little bit better in search down the stretch, but has been very poor overall in control this split, so hopefully he can step it up. Does FaZe have some kind of weak maps in the pool? Vault's not really been kind to them across all modes. Aussie Hardpoint's been a little bit iffy. I would have liked to have seen them maybe get another rep on that instead of Vault Hardpoint against C9, but their S&D map pool is pretty good. They just don't really play Hossie S&D, but that's fine. They're really good at all the other maps. And man, I don't really think anyone's going to play them at protocol control. The two recent ones they've seen have been 3-0 blowouts, and I just think everybody's going to avoid them on that map probably in general. One other stat to really track with this team, they are actually surprisingly this split, not amongst the league leaders in first blood win percentage. They are slightly below average on here. They do scam a lot of 4v3s right now, and some of this was a lot of rounds that they lost in the beginning of the year, so this number's been slowly like ticking up. But it's not at, say, that Toronto 82%. But the thing with this about this number is they also get like an insane amount of first bloods and are number one in first blood percentage in the league. So if any team can get away with first blood win percentage being not the best, is a team that's getting number one in first bloods. But obviously, if they, if one of those numbers start to move in the wrong direction, it could be an issue where FaZe don't win enough S&Ds to win this event in a few days. Now, they have Boston in winners round one. They should be able to take that one. They just beat Boston 3-0. Toronto, a little bit of a rematch from earlier in the year where Toronto beat them 3-1. I think that one could be really interesting if Toronto plays up and plays well. I know Thieves always plays pretty good against the FaZe boys, but I think FaZe will find a way through. And again, I just think we're destined to see OpTic FaZe a couple of times this event, probably once in the winners finals, as well at grand finals at the end of this. So I think OpTic and FaZe are really your 1A, 1B right now. I don't really know who's going to win. I'll do a predictions video later this week, but I think it's kind of a toss-up between the two. They have some questions going to land, and we'll see which one answers the most of them come Saturday, Sunday. The rest of the tier list is pretty good. OpTic FaZe really the class above Toronto and Thieves right now. Boston and Carolina are kind of that next tier. Vancouver, I just don't really know if they're going to get 6th, 8th, dead last at this one. And unfortunately, I have 5 teams at the bottom. Minnesota, Miami, LAG, Gorilla Mates, Cloud9, and Vegas, I think all are probably making roster changes at the end of this event. So let me know what you guys think of the tier list video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.